Okay, Viper's videos back out in the barn. Another steamy, hot, I think today it's about 95 degrees with around 70 or 71 dew point. Seems that's all I've been saying lately. And I watch a lot of other folks' videos and I'm noticing, whether you want to call it climate change or heat wave or all these other terms, it looks like a lot of folks are dealing with some really unusual hot streaks of weather all across the country. Just saying, it's a hot, steamy one, so I'm sure that whatever this does, it'll be nice and speedy. Oh, what is this? This is a Chiappa, or Chiappa. I've heard it said both ways. I'm going to guess it's more like Chiappa. No, it could be Chiappa. Anyway, Chiappa Firearms Rhino 50DS. This is a replica that is very, very accurate looking and dimensionally to the real firearm, which was originally in 357 Magnum. This is the CO2 177 caliber version. And this is, again, is another one of those ones I bought strictly because it is a really, really accurate replica. Dimensionally, as I said. Weight-wise, let's talk about weight. This is a very unique situation on this replica because this one actually weighs more than the than the real firearm. So let me get started by just, I don't usually get into too many specs, but let me just tell you some interesting things a lot of folks don't. First and foremost, I actually owned a Rhino myself. It was a 40DS, so it was a 4-inch barrel. The 50, 40, 60 designates whether it's a 4-inch barrel, a 5-inch barrel, or 6. In this case, this is replicating the 5-inch barreled Rhino. Anyway, let's get back to the weight. In many, many, many cases, a lot of these modern replicas, they do a really good job of replicating their shape, their size, their dimension, their feel. And in many cases, they're close to the weight, but they're always typically just a little under. This is the first replica firearm, CO2 version, that I have found that's actually heavier. This is heavier than a real Rhino 50DS. The weight listed for this is 2.5 pounds, the way it came out of the box. Actually, this particular one on a pretty regulated scale is 2.52 pounds. The actual firearm is 1.97 pounds, so this is actually over a half a pound heavier. This gun, I mean, oh my God, I wouldn't want to be hit by this. It would literally just smash your head in. It's such a heavy metal gun. So, and that's going to come in handy for when we get to the trigger. Oh boy, that's another story. But anyway, so this is actually over a half a pound heavier, and it gets heavier with the CO2 cartridge and BBs and pellets and such. The barrel is, again, this is replicating the 5-inch Rhino model. In fact, you know how I am with these, with the barrel situations. While this is replicated as a 5-inch barrel, the actual proper smoothbore ends up being 4 inches. So from back here at the pretend forcing cone, or you know, that tapered gizmo that goes into the cylinder, when you go up to 4 inches, that's where the standard smoothbore 177 caliber barrel ends. And then we have, well, you've got the half of a half-inch of a fake barrel right in there, and then so you don't even have anything for except just a giant opening. And then there's that oversized, I think that ends up being like 7/16. So the 4 inches comes up to about here. Then you have that oversized BB, like a 6mm oversized, and then you have the fake firearm barrel, which is just a giant crevice looking like firearms rifling. Okay, a little bit longer than you needed, but again, none of these replicas, I swear to God, they just don't have any frickin' consistency when it comes to what the barrel lengths are. I don't know how these guys are engineering and designing that, but always remember that's the replica barrel. Okay, another interesting thing, we go to this side. Online, this is spec'd out as a 177 caliber 4.5 millimeter BB pistol, like on Pyramid Air, Airgun Depot, Amazon, wherever you tend to get it. If you look at the box, I'll show you a picture here. And as you can see, it just says caliber 177 4.5 millimeter. Doesn't say BB or pellet. So the online places where you buy it calls it a BB pistol. Now the gun here starts to talk about 177 caliber 4.5 millimeter BB, and I was always under the impression that's a symbol for the ability to be a pellet pistol as well. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I was thinking. All right, so now let's take a look at this picture. And as you can see, the replacement cartridges are actually BB or pellet. Okay, so let's revisit real quick. So online, this is advertised as a BB gun. On the box, it doesn't say anything except for 177 caliber. On the other side of this, you see a BB designation and a pellet, and then on the replacement cartridges, you see BB or pellet. Isn't that interesting? So now that I blabbed your ear off about what they're speccing it out as, what cartridges did they give us? So I'm kind of jumping ahead here, getting to the cartridges, but we'll get to the fake hammer or the actual cocking lever and then the trigger. But this would be the cylinder release. Like they call it some other kind of lever, but on a Dan Wesson 715, you've got this pulley thing out here. On the Smith & Wesson, you've got it here, so on. But you pull down on this lever and you take the cylinder out, and of course the things want to fly all over. But let's take a look at what did they give us. Okay, so I actually put a C on here so I didn't get them mixed up. If you're anything like me, you probably get really confused on Peacemaker, Exterminator, Dan Wesson 1, Dan Wesson 715. You've got the Smith & Wesson TRR-8 something or other, the M29. So you've got all these different cartridges, and it gets so confusing as to what you've actually got. So what I ended up doing, this is jumping ahead of these cartridges here, but I do that a lot. I ended up getting this little thing at, you can get it at Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, maybe even another dime store, Target or Walmart. But it's just a little container, and I got so confused for so long on what shells go to what gun, and one's a pellet, one's a BB, etc. I ended up making this gizmo up to hold the shells, and obviously, if you get your little card, on the top, you can cut it off, and then I just write what else it is. So these would be for Colt Peacemaker pellets, and also if you choose to use it for pellets for the Smith & Wesson Model 29, that's what it is. This would be Colt Peacemaker BBs and Model 29. And I'm writing old style on here for some reason. It must have been, oh, I see, it's something in the contour of the shell itself, but the diameters are the same. So basic difference between any of these cartridges is the BB cartridge holders are just a tad smaller diameter, inner diameter where the BB goes through, than the pellets are a little larger, and I'm thinking because of the skirt or the head or something. But a lot of people say, oh, there's no big difference. Yeah, there is, but that's where it gets really convoluted with something like this, and we'll get to that. So anyway, here's what I was talking about with this Exterminator, Dan Wesson 715, Chiappa. These are marketed as pellet cartridges. Now, as you saw on the Bbl replacement cartridges, that said pellet or BB. Now that's interesting because it hasn't been like that. So in other words, if you're buying this one, you're going to notice they're identical to this. And all you got to do is get a caliper, pin gauges. They're literally the same. Sometimes they're marked on the back that there's something special, like the Dan Wessons. They'll say Dan West, DW, blah, 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 pellet. Anyway, so then here would be, these last ones would be the BB version of the Dan Wesson, where they have you put them in the front. So and then it actually says on the back, oh, this is Smith. Why does it say Smith & Wesson? Oh, this is for the 327 R8. So this one's actually marked Smith & Wesson. So you buy these things and you just don't even know what the devil you're getting. But anyway, this is how I keep them separate. I didn't mean to drag you into that, but you might be interested for your own edification or however you want to keep these things separate. So back to the Chiappa. So here's what they supply you with. And if we go back and look at what I just shared with you, this is actually typically sold as the Exterminator or Dan Wesson pellet, ASG pellet cartridge. This is actually a larger diameter, like I said, than the BB. So now that's what makes me think why they put the pellet on here, and the retail packaging for the replacement cartridges says pellet or BB. So they're kind of departing from this one, this cartridge is for that. So they're actually selling these oversized, these slightly oversized cartridges, because they obviously don't want you shooting pellets out of the BB smaller diameter. So that's my guess, that's my opinion. After having so many of these guns and playing with this stuff for so long, it's easy to get confused on that, but that's what I think is happening. They're just going ahead and now they're going to use the larger diameter for BBs, and that way if somebody decides to shoot pellets out of it, which of course the retail packaging says, even though the website selling this don't. Okay, confusing enough? All right. So what I might try to do is actually try BBs out of the BB versions, which would be the Smith & Wesson 327 TR8 or the Dan Wesson BB version, which is apparently the same. Okay, yeah, I've confused everybody, but we'll try that and see what happens. What else do we got? Yeah, see how confusing that is? That's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, we're going to go ahead and try some Umarex steel BBs and the Bbl RWS Bbl Basic 7 grain, which tends to do good and just a lot. I keep singing the praises of this, but they're a really good pellet for the money. The unique thing about rhinos, in case someone doesn't know out there, so we've got a hexagonal cylinder with flat sides, and the idea behind that is the original rhino was it was either a 2 or 2.5 inch model, and it was like that. And it was a snub nose. And this was to make it a smaller diameter for more easy concealment in a holster, maybe in your pocket if you got super large pants, in the waistband. If anything, it was just to make it a thinner profile than a larger, round cylinder. So they took the sides down. As I was saying something about the hammer, this is actually not a hammer. This is considered a cocking lever. They just happen to shape it like a hammer. So if you go in single action, this is a single action or double action. I actually have the CO2 loaded in this, but so if you squeeze the trigger, see how this does not do anything. So I've already started to stage it, and if I squeeze it all the way, okay, there it's staged and it's still stacking. it's a really super heavy trigger. Like, okay, there you go. So that's a really super heavy trigger in double action. Then single action, if you cock this back, if you watch, okay, you've rotated, advanced the cylinder, but this goes back to rest because it is just a cocking lever. Then you've got this red little plastic dinghy. By the way, I think that besides the grips, that's like the only piece of plastic on this whole thing. Random statement. That is to let you know that the gun is cocked and ready to go, because otherwise on a normal single action your hammer's back, but if this is just a cocking lever and that's all it does, now you'd have to recognize the trigger. You would just have to know. Now the good news is, my God, this trigger is so heavy. Okay. You better start lifting weights and getting coconut crushing hand strength, because this trigger is like ridiculously heavy. So I'm not going to waste the CO2 yet, so you can actually decock this, and you saw that dimple go way up. Now it's decocked. But so that's how the hammer works. The hammer is internal, again, cocking lever, double action, single action. This is how you release the cylinder. It has adjustable windage and elevation, rear sight. I noticed that on some of the higher end ones of these, it comes with a fiber optic. This just came with a standard front ramp. Safety right here, so if you put it on, I don't know how that started to advance, but that's it. That's all it goes. And if you have it cocked, and you push the safety on, yeah, you can't get it to go. So, but I don't, you know, I always still believe you should have safeties and use them, but boy, I'm telling you, this gun, the trigger is the safety because it's so hard to pull. You'd have to so consciously try to pull it. CO2 goes in the handle like so many others. You have your little cutout, kind of at a weird angle here, okay? Left side of the grip comes with the Allen thing right in there, so you can tighten her up. I already have CO2 in to save myself the trouble of sitting outside in this heat too long. Find this little notch with that little dinghy there. You don't want to try to force any of this. You'll feel that it's in place and you squeeze it shut. So besides the trigger, the only other gripe I have about this is, again, these plastic clamshell grips are so noisy. And they're creaky, and you can feel them moving a little bit. So that's the only deficits I have so far, is the heaviness, the ridiculous heaviness of the trigger and the squishiness of the grips. I've kind of learned to combat that. The one thing I hated about the real gun is the same thing I don't like about this. And the grip is some kind of a weird, it's a little bit wider at the top, a little bit wedgy at the bottom. It's literally like a curved, thick broomstick, which just doesn't help me. I mean, you can get up kind of high, but then it gets to be an awkward angle for getting my finger in the trigger. So this grip may be perfect for some folks and not too great for others. I just never really liked it on the real firearm, and I don't like it here. So what I ended up doing in both cases was fashioning. You can either buy these whole or cut pieces off. This is just a piece of a rubber grip sleeve, and I'm going to put that on and then show you what I'm talking about. Like I did with my real Rhino, I had a full-size rubber grip sleeve on the real one, but this one here I've kind of incorporated some from some small handgun. I probably just had this in a drawer, and I like to slide this on, and it can put this where I want it, so that when I squeeze it, it's where I want my grip to be, and it's just enough rubber to feel like I've got something. There's like ledges to catch, and it just feels much better to me. Now the deficit to this, of course, is that this is a CO2 gun, so you can only have this on as long as you're shooting, but when the CO2 is out, you gotta take it off. Where on a real firearm, you can leave it on forever, and otherwise this thing is a beast of a gun. So let's try shooting this thing. I think I will start by shooting it with the supplied cartridges and the X BBs, and then what I will do, just for the heck of it, is I'll try the Dan Wesson BB cartridges, which should in fact work in this, and that would be normally, if they wanted to complicate it, that's what they should have, offered it with, but they probably don't want you shooting pellets out of here, so there you go. Boy, let's not cover that again. All right. So, how do we load this bad boy? You're gonna have to put the BBs into the back here. Of course, you loaded your CO2 with a drop of oil. Some do, some don't. I think we've covered this before. I'm not really the best at doing this. There's kind of two schools of thought. You can take and find it, push that in like that. Some people will take and put them in their hand. Take an empty one and just push it in their hand, push it in. Some folks will leave these in the gun. We'll leave these in the gun and then just hand load them in the back one at a time. I don't like doing that. It's really not good for me to do it. So what I've learned to do, fortunately it's not as fun on the sweaty days like today, but I'll just put as many BBs as I need, like right in my hand. In this case, we need 3. And again, this is hard to do while you're trying to film. And I'm telling you something that's really weird. Look at how they've actually gone in a little too far. That's why I'm telling you, I really believe, even if these are marketed as BB and pellet, as they wear, that BB could stand a chance of like falling through, but they actually really set in real far. where the BB versions, they got to really push in hard. So that's what makes me think these are pellet ones anyway. So, but it's going to work. So as always, I am going to shoot down yonder, 10 yards, 30 feet. And we'll give that a try and see, you can set up the camera and see what we got. Okay, boy. Now that, all in all, from a BB pistol, that's not a horrible group, especially with the trigger like that one. So I'm going to adjust the rear sight by screwing it down, and that will force me to lower my front blade, and then it'll lower the trajectory. So, but yeah, that's, yeah. It's not a bad group. It's certainly not real great though. So I'm going to turn this off and go take care of that, and then we'll try that again. Okay, so back at the table, lowered the rear sight about, I'm going to say, it felt like it was almost click adjustable, but I don't think it was. But what I ended up doing was I think I went down about 3/4 of a turn of the screw overall. So I'm thinking that like every quarter of a turn may end up being something like a 1/2 inch. So if I want to bring her down to about here, I figure that's about 1.5 inches. So we'll try it. I have no idea. But that will force me, of course, if you lower this, then you lower your ramp to keep it in line. So we'll give it a try and see what happens. Okay, looks like I might have lowered it just a tad too much, and for some reason lowering it seems to have shifted it a little bit to the right. So I will go up, I'll say maybe just about 1/4 of a turn, and maybe just over to the left, maybe around 1/4 of a turn. And I'm going to, and I'm quite confident that's where I'll need to be. Well, like I was saying earlier when we were discussing the ammunition for these, I'm going to try the BB version that would normally come for like the Dan Wesson 715, the Smith & Wesson, perhaps even the Exterminator, I'm not sure. But these ones fit a little bit more snug, and they're typically designed for the BB smoothbore. So we'll give this a try, and yeah, I did adjust the sight, so we'll see. I kind of did, you should always just do one thing at a time. Unfortunately there I just did 2 things, so we'll see what happens. But I'm really just hoping this will improve the grouping, not necessarily the trajectory. That's still all in the sights. But as I was trying to say when I was, okay, this is empty, so it's safe. But boy, this, I'm not kidding you. Okay, first of all, the single action, forget about it. That's really tough. But this double action trigger, when you are squeezed, that part is really nice. The staging, so easy. But right now, man, I am telling you, I have really strong hands, and I'm giving it everything I got before that thing is gonna, my God, oh, before it goes off. Yeah, that is one heavy trigger. So even though I'm bagging it, sandbagging it, I'm telling you, it's still, boy, you got to really be able to have good trigger control and hand strength for that gun not to move. Plus, I'm not sure, you know, how good a barrel it's got in it, but making a lot of excuses. Let's give it a try. Oh wow, my hunch was right. Okay, well, at least I know that I've zeroed it in. The sights are zeroed in at least for those BBs. And, well, I guess the group, okay, so that was my first group, and that was my second. So the BB shells do tend to work better. Wow, that's actually pretty decent for that horrible trigger. So let's go back and talk about pellets and such. I wasn't hoping it would happen. I expected that would happen, to be honest with you. When you buy the BB version of the Dan Wesson, you get these, and when you buy the pellet version, you get these. So as I said, if you were to take some gauge pins, dial caliper, whatever, you'll see that the pellet version is a little bit larger diameter. I assume for the larger diameter pellets, because these are only like 0.171 to 0.173. Pellets can be 173 to 177. So they're going to be larger diameter than the BBs. Okay, I'm just really dragging this out, but you just saw, should have brought the target back, that it tightened up the group when you were using what my opinion is the correct ammo for the gun. But I think they're trying to save manufacturing costs. They're trying to streamline it, trying not to confuse the public. But this gun says on the websites it's BB, says on the box it's just a 177, and then the cartridges you get for it are pellets. So anyway, my opinion, my belief, but I'm telling you that's how it's working. So now let's try pellets out of this, because of course we saw that the package for these pellets, or these cartridges if you buy them, says you can use pellets. So let's give that a try. Of course we know it's a smooth bore still, but let's see what happens. I'm going to start off with the Bbl Basic 7 grain. So how you load these is kind of the same as the BBs. You got your head of your pellet, you got the back side of the cartridge, you just push it in. I just use my fingernail. You can use a multitude of tools, but just make sure that it's in there all the way. I got a feeling, unless this barrel system is really crappy, this is probably going to be fairly accurate. But again, we still are contending with this. Oh my God. Okay, there's single action. Forget about that again. That's a cocker. But I'm just going to fart. I mean, you can't even almost accidentally squeeze this. I mean, yeah, sucker is so, that's the ugliest trigger I have on any gun, period. So, enough griping. Let's get to shooting. Okay, that's pretty good for a smooth bore. So again, it's better with pellets and BBs. So let's go back and talk about this. Okay, so that was pretty amazing. So there's, of course, the hole it makes, but when we honestly look at where the hits are, you're dealing with, bam, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so wow, except for this one outside of that ring up there, oh my goodness, that's pretty amazing for a smooth bore. But it kind of is still reinforcing my belief that they're actually supplying you with, supplying us with pellet cartridges. So even though all the other guns pretty much segregate the BB cartridges from the pellet ones, this Chiappa is kind of breaking that mold and saying to use both BBs and pellets in the same cartridge. Okay, so sorry we never quite got to these Crossburn Premier hollow points. I suspect they would have done very similar to this, using, of course, the right cartridges here. But with the heat and humidity, I've just got to kind of cut this short. So the only gripes about this in closing, the trigger, I do not like those grips making that squishy movement kind of sound. Anyway, hope this was informative. Hope you learned something. And if you want a replica that is heavier and almost better built than the real gun, boy, this might be for you. If you want a target gun, oh my, this is not for you. So thanks for watching. Have a good one.